Get your.
So it's coming through here. Yeah, I can't tell with the earphones in.
All right. Now we have Brian Drake and Jeff Harper from Accrete AI Government.
Thanks, Katie. So I'll start with an overview, and then Brian will take us through the technology. But a little bottom line up front. What's groundbreaking about our technology and unique to Accrete is that we've automated the labeling of data. So without that human in the loop, the analysts and users are really free to scale the volume of information because it's now being performed at machine speed, and we're doing it in multiple languages. The technology and product was developed in cooperation with and tested and subsequently fielded by a defense intelligence customer. And when we talk about use cases for the Navy, more specifically buckets of AI, looking at automating rote tasks, providing that decision advantage or decision aids, or essentially just anywhere that you need to rapidly make sense of a massive amount of data. I'll turn it over to Brian to demonstrate.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Okay. Okay, so what you see here is our platform we call Argus. This particular solution ingests about 40 million documents. We are in the quality assurance environment, not the production environment, just so that we can show a demonstration of all the capabilities that are available. We specialize in unstructured text. So a lot of solutions on the market do a lot with structured documents and structured databases. We actually excel at taking things that are really, really messy and finding ways to derive some insight out of that. So obviously we specialize in taking things from HTML, XML, PDFs, even PDFs with embedded images. We have solutions that allow us to then extract the key entities from those documents and then normalize them and then surface back to a user a single entity that is deconflicted with other pieces of information. The large differentiator that Jeff has already kind of talked about is that we auto tag that information. So a lot of other vendors in this market are providing tools that require some degree of tagging of the documents that get ingested, which means you're going to take your talent and dedicate them to tagging documents, reading documents, and telling the machine what it is. Our auto tagging feature doesn't alleviates that burden from you, which means that you don't need to hire an army of taggers or dedicate your staff to go after documents to make sense out of them. We do that in an automated way. Based on our benchmark testing and third-party testing, we are 85 to 95% accurate, depending on the complexity of the data source we're looking at. And that's considerably more advanced than our next closest competitor, which is about 40% accurate. So we're pretty proud of that. And by bundling that together with the knowledge graph that I'm going to show you here today, you can immediately get to work on getting some insights from the documents that you have. All right, so obviously this landing screen is a bit of fantasy because it's real documents, but it's fake workflows. So what you're looking at here is what an analyst would see when they come into the environment. They'd see what new documents get loaded. In this space, you would see the number of that's in the corpus. This particular one has 39 million different documents. We have 12 million raw entities and 20K normalized entities, and then 3,000 updated name variants. So if you were in the daily workflow and you were seeing those things, that dashboard would tell you this is what's changed from the last time you were there. Obviously, there's a search history here, things that you've looked at in the past. And then if you were working on a particular investigation, which we call a case study, those would be saved here, where you could then pull it up and see what other people are working on or what you've been doing. And then there's an area for saved queries so that there's a continual process. So for this particular solution, this was for a supply chain problem, and it's focused on foreign adversaries and their influence over the U.S. supply chain. And it really answers two different questions. One question it's answering is that something where I know something about it and I just want to verify that information. So questions to which I pretty much know the answer, but I just need to confirm it. The second thing it answers are questions to which I do not know the answer, which are highly probably more abstract and less well understood. And so we provide steerage for analysts that are answering either of those questions to better understand it. So we're going to start with a process of where I don't know I know something I'm looking for, and we're going to just pick something like a company of interest. In this case, I'm going to pick Twitter. So right now, this is going through the knowledge graph in real time, and it's pulling back data from news sources, S&P index, business filings, really, really messy content, and it's now surfacing back results that I would get into that feed. Now, this is obviously our knowledge graph visualization here at the bottom. It also includes snippets from data sources, and I can click the source itself, or I can click into a snippet just to see what it is. Right, obviously, there's some data here about Elon Musk acquiring Twitter, so I can click the HTML source, and it just shows me a little snippet of what information started to surface forward there. Remember, in this particular use case, I know what I'm looking for, so I would expect to see things like that. The knowledge graph here allows me to verify that's in fact true. So if I'm seeing things that I would expect to see, like ties back to Elon Musk, ties to Jack Dorsey, ties to San Francisco locations, Tesla, SpaceX, all of that would make sense in the given context of something that I am looking for. So once I have this kind of information, I can start to dig in deeper, click in, and maybe do some down selects for types of companies that are tied into this knowledge graph, or I can look at specific types of people. Based on customer preferences, we selected that to 10, but you could go as deep as you so choose. And if you wanted to do a click like here, like Jack Dorsey, we would click that and we could do a new search, and then it would narrow that even further. And as you can see here at the top, that total corpus that's coming back is that 40 million document number. And in this particular search, we had 500,000, down selecting just to Jack Dorsey. Now we're at 11,000 documents. Now, if I wanted this information to be exportable into a report, I just click this as generate report, and this puts it into a PDF that I can then cite. The reason why this was important for our particular client, which this was built for, was that it works in the intelligence business. So this particular client needed to have a place to cite back where this information came from and have some understanding of why that information was rendered back. Now, we do not follow a just trust us model. We operate on a glass box context. We want you to know exactly how we derive insights and where those things come from. We do not hide any of that from anybody or any of our customers, because we want our AI to be explainable. We believe that's our ethical obligation. So as part of all that, we also highlight into this report, and I think I've given it enough time to generate. I can look at this report and it will show you everything that we have seen. This is an older one, but I'll show it anyway. So this particular one is about investment activity, and it shows a description of where we got that information, how the investment activity was generated, and the information that was generated from all that. And then if I click this link here, it'll go directly to the data. I won't do that because it's going to take too long to load, because we pull from millions of reports. So as we go through that discovery process, and I've decided that these are this is what I'm interested in, I can then have that report exported and I can use it for something else. So again, that is the use case where I know exactly what I'm looking for, and I want to learn something about it. Now, let's take a more unstructured query that might come to us. Let's say that I was asked, I want to understand the degree to which the Italian government is under the influence of the Chinese. I'm going to look through my selections here, and I'm going to type in Italy. And I'm going to select Italy as a geography. And the question I was given is, to what degree is the government under the influence of the Chinese? I'm going to choose this, and I'm going to hit search. So now what this is doing is this is pulling from entities that we've normalized and extracted across the corpus of all of our information. And now it is crunching that back down into an understanding of uh, geography, nomenclature, identifiers, things like phone numbers, addresses, fax numbers, emails, and it's now pushing that all into one entity that I can now look at. Okay. So when I start to look at those entities, it gets rendered into this list, and it has a categorization that comes forward with that. Now, these categories come from the data itself. Again, it's auto tagged and auto extracted. There's no human in the loop here that does all this. It's just coming to you in an automatic way, which means I can immediately understand some very basic information about these particular entities, right? So I have a series of provinces. I've got some other things to look at. Obviously, there's no industry because it's all government. If it were something like aerospace, it would say boosters or it would say control surfaces and things like that. So we're going to take a look at the province of Turin, and we're going to do an influence search. And a company pops forward here, Filamonte SPA. Okay. And you can see this influence bracket that says moderate. So under this particular model, which we call the black, white, gray model, we are looking for entities that have some degree of influence by the Chinese government. And red in this context is very bad. Green, it's fine, more neutral. And it's looking for things like Chinese levels of investment, where that how much is going in, where it is from, other commingled investments, and it's also looking at other indicators, things like I was mentioning before, addresses and phone numbers. So I'm going to click into the province of Turin, and I can see that there's a relationship here that Filamonte SPA has an investment in the Turin province. And then I'm going to click this to look a little bit larger at Filamonte SPA. And this graph auto-populates, and I, of course, can zoom in and start to look at the relationships that come in here. And you can see a collection of red and orange and yellow. So the purpose of having that color variation is to allow analysts to focus in on what is important. We could surface a lot of information here where we would require them to do the work. That isn't helpful for them. They need to have something that indicates at a click what's going on, why I need to pay attention to it, and what I can ignore. And now you don't have to trust us on that. You can go and you can look at other things of interest and you can continue to click in and inspect. So if you wanted to say, Ms. Sylvia Poi here, I'm not sure. Looks like she's in a gray bracket. I want to see if there's any other connections. It actually turns out there isn't any other. She's just a member of the board. But maybe Mr. Luca Remnant is interesting. So I'm going to click into him. Looks like he's got another activity that he's participating in where he is also the member of the board there. So that's interesting. But I'm going to continue to inspect this company, Filamonte SPA, which also is coming up red under extreme influence. And now I get a much more rich graph that's showing me a lot of interesting connections to lots of different places. Now, if I don't want to go through this discovery process, remember, I'm still trying to figure out what should I pay attention to and not pay attention to. I can click the XAI tab, and it starts to show me a characterization of what I need to be paying attention to and where money is flowing. It's going to take a moment to load. So this is the Turin province, and it's showing here that we have investments from the China Construction Bank Corporation, the People's Bank of China, the Sinovac Biotech Limited Company, that happens to be a biotech company located in China. And then we see some interesting things here too, like the California Department of Transportation. So there are areas of investigation that we tee up for analysts to see and to figure out do I need to pay attention to where China's involved and what tethers come back into the United States. We've seen some really interesting stuff where you do a search for something like Huawei America, and you'll see things coming back that link back to Russia and Iran. So when we see those types of links, those are things to pay attention to and probably are important for analysts to examine. So one last thing I want to show you here is you can see there's a red circle around this circle. That means an anomaly is present. This particular one also is in the extreme category. It appears that there is I'm going to click into it so we can see a little bit better. Okay, let the graph settle down a little bit. So for this particular entity, we see several different companies that are co-located with this particular entity. That by itself, and this entity is a power company, a natural gas company in Italy. So being co-located in a place isn't necessarily something that would be all that unusual. We all have office buildings that we work at, and then we probably have multiple companies in those office buildings. It's just something to examine and to allow the analysts to draw conclusions from there. But there are several other anomalies that are showing forward, which would require further investigation. So this includes a technology company. So that's interesting. Natural gas company co-located with a technology company in the same building. Probably not too unusual. Just means that we have to take a look at it. We also see some interesting names that are popping forward. Notice that these little bubbles are popping up where there's a a description. This is not human entered. This comes from the data. So this saves your folks an extra step of trying to go Google and figure out what these things are as they come forward, and allows you to draw some intuitive connections between those things. Okay. Couple other things I want to highlight. I want to first start with this translation tool. So we are translating both English, well, obviously English is English, but we're translating Chinese from sources that we pull forward in an automated format. And as part of the proof of concept of that, we took a series of documents that the Chinese government publishes, and mostly every year, some sort of plan is being published. What becomes interesting is when you see things like the Artificial Intelligence Development Plan, they will produce a report and they will put that out in the public. And this is what it would look like. This particular one is 12 pages in Chinese. China counts on the United States not spending time to translate a document like this. And so in this case, they did not release an official translation. They did not. But we have an automatic translation tool, which we can then take that document and we can publish it in English. This, and it turns out to be 26 pages when you put it into English. Oh, sorry, 29. But what becomes fun about this is that we can see things like when there is an official translation put out and then our translation, we can see the delta between those things. So if the Chinese government was trying to hide a particular activity, we'd be able to see that they did not choose to translate that, probably because they wanted us not to see it. Okay. Last thing is our investments module. So this pulls from a lot of business filings, international investment. One of the challenges that analysts are frequently confronted with is like, where's the money going? If I see investments coming from a foreign government, where does that go? How does it get spent? We have automated that process based on publicly available information. And often we get a question around what's the degree of investment that China makes into Africa. So we're going to do a query across that. Our data goes back to the year 2000 and goes forward out to the year 2033 because some investments that are made don't mature until 2033, especially international development investments. And we can look at that in several different ways. The first one is through Geo Influence. Now we're looking back in time. This is the year 2000. And this is what China's investment footprint looked like on the continent. We also include the Middle East here. So you can see not too much going on, but we can also use this slider and we can start to see where that investment moves over time. And then we can zip it forward out here to 2019. See that Angola has a sizable investment. And then if we want to figure out, okay, where is that money going? We click the investments flow tab. We can do the same thing. We can walk it through and see how investments change over time. Very large investment in the Sudan in 2003. There happened to be a civil war going on at that time. So we can investigate that further, or we can keep moving through. We can see their investments has diversified over the years. Now we're going to zip ahead to the year 2017, and I can click into, let's say, Nigeria. And now I'm going to see Chinese investment in Nigeria over this period of time. These projects, it's because I need to move the slider here, 2017. Okay, so now we can see that we've got investments from the China Railroad Construction Company. That looks like it's $14 billion. Energy and supply, $840 million. $1.4 billion of transport and storage. Right, some of these projects don't have names, some of them do. It all becomes interesting places of investigation. The reason why this is interesting, ZTE Corporation, that happens to be part of their Smart Cities initiative. This is a very large surveillance project that the Chinese use, and they broker it as a security apparatus. So if you were so inclined and you wanted to know where China was investing their surveillance technology worldwide, this would show you where those investments were occurring. So this kind of analysis for a given analyst would take about 6 months to pull together. We are obviously doing that in considerably shorter periods of time, probably maybe 6 minutes. And with that kind of power, you can turn this toward any number of different solutions. Budgeting to see kind of where money is going, preventive maintenance. You can look at positioning of assets and length of legs on those assets, augment those assets with additional assistance or enablers like air bridges, that sort of thing. With that, ready for any questions.
All right. And again, any questions, we can connect you guys with the audience after the event. But thank you so much for that. We will meet back at 3:35 for the final presentation.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day. See you.
See ya.